All right, joined by Tim May, former Ohio State receiver DeVier Posey. You hear them both on 97.1 The Fan. Adam King. With the House settlement, colleges can now pay their athletes. And in Ohio State's case, they're going to pay football players, they're going to pay men's and women's basketball players, and they're going to pay women's volleyball. Volleyball. Tim, we asked Ross Bjork to break that all down, how it was going to be. $18 million is going to be used to pay the athletes, and then $2.5 million to pay for scholarships. We'll get into that in a minute. He wouldn't tell us how they were going to break it down, but can we assume the majority of that money is going to football?
Well, I would think so, since the majority of the revenue is generated by football. So, yeah, I mean, I would think that's where it's going. It'll be interesting because, you know, you've seen little estimates here and there and heard little estimates in your ear of like anywhere from $13 to $15 million going to football. And then you do the math, you know, and that's a pretty good payday for those young men. But then I'm still not clear in my mind whether you can pay your starting quarterback more than you pay your third string right guard or left guard. Or
you can.
Huh?
You can.
I know you can, but will everybody pursue that? You know, because obviously there will be NIL opportunities on top of that.
Yeah, and we'll get into that too. DeVier, $18 million to go to pay the athletes, $2.5 million to pay for 91 scholarships. What's your take on that? And obviously, Ohio State is going to keep 36 varsity sports, but you know, some of them may be walk-on sports now. It's weird. It's a whole new dynamic.
It's a whole new dynamic. The best part about it is Ohio State is taking the lead for the nation. We've been preparing for this. Ross has came to Ohio State for this week, and he's ready to have a plan laid out. It's interesting because we are traditionally an endowed scholarship model. That's how my scholarship was. People, you know, pick the player and get paid for his scholarship. That's all going away. We're into a new reality here, and it's almost like a salary cap. I want to see how we balance it. And I feel, though, a lot of universities will follow our model.
Adam, the collective system apparently is gone. It's gone. With that said, they now have the Buckeye Sports Group that's going to help the kids. Now, that's the whole other thing. They're going to pay, the universities will, but then they're still going to have this NIL world where they're going to go out and try to get kids endorsements and to be business partners and all that. And supposedly there's rules. If you make money in the NIL world, there's a clearinghouse. Is all this good, or is it still murky?
It's exactly what they needed. I don't know how long it'll last. My over-under is about 48 hours after July 1st before somebody really says my fair market value is this. But I think it's what you need. The idea is $600 or more. It's got to go through this clearinghouse.
$600 or more. Come on. I mean,
you
seriously.
charge what, $1 million an appearance anyway? So I mean,
what is Jeremiah Smith's market value in this market?
Dom doesn't take a bow for
about $5,000 an hour for sure. Yeah,
so
at least. Yeah.
$5,000 an hour. I mean, you're doing them at a discount there. I'll tell you this much. It's not going to work in that regard. I understand and I love the thought process, but you can't tell someone in a capitalist society how much they're worth. If someone is going to pay, someone is allowed to cash in on that value.
But I ask you, what are the benefits for a business owner, right? And when we look at it from that perspective, how can your business grow by having Jeremiah Smith involved in it?
Well, is he serious? Is he? You working for
these guys?
What's the benefit? You win a national title, you raise a trophy. That's all they care about.
Well, also it's the social equity that these guys bring, right? These guys have millions of followers based off the plays they make, and so for a business and what these guys have, you're right. It was a rhetorical question. There is no market cap.
Well, and here's the other thing.
Here's the other point. We're in the United States.
I had the other point.
Well, yeah, but you've already had three.
Okay.
We're in the United States of America. Who is to say if I think Jeremiah Smith is worth this to my business, that he's not that he's worth less than that or more than that? That's where it's going to get. You know, we've just started on the lawsuits. The lawsuits are really going to come hot and heavy in the NIL realm.
And that's the point I want to make. You would hope that these folks that are leading this will see that, A, there's lawsuits still out there percolating. You know, the House settlement was settled or whatever, but there's still people now appealing that.
Of course.
They need to stay out of the courts. They need to get this, and hopefully they understand in a capitalistic society. And we saw it firsthand. Quinn Ewers kind of set the example. He couldn't make the money in Texas in high school, so he came out early, came to Ohio State, made his $2 million plus, and then went back to Texas.
And helped Ohio State win a national title.
But,
Yes.
But the bottom line is,
By giving it up.
hope that these guys calling the shots don't end up booby-trapping themselves into courts with more lawsuits.
Dom, do you know the name Kendall Jenner?
Yes.
Okay. Kendall Jenner charges like $300,000 to post one thing on her Instagram.
Right.
So the argument is really there in this capitalist society, in this social media world, that well, people are out there paying not just for football players.
Yeah.
Influencers.
Influencers.
Influencers. The influencer world. That's what these guys really are at this point, is they're influencers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
And how do you put a price tag on that? I mean,
Exactly.
that's what's going to be interesting. The clearinghouse is going to be the thing most in the crosshairs of the litigators moving forward.
well, and hopefully they are smarter than that. And
Well, that just
understand.
bothers you that they get to this point and it's almost like a Pollyanna approach to the $600.
I don't know where.
I don't know where the $600 thing even came from, but it's almost like the old days in a lot of respects. The NCAA, its member schools just can't give up on that.
And Tim, let me ask you this, because I hope they figure it out and whatever. Given that, does Ohio State have an advantage then in this country? The largest fan base, they're all over. You look at and I'm going to use the SEC versus the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten in general will have an advantage over the SEC because
Absolutely.
if you look at some of the cities where the SEC is versus where the North is, and
There's
I don't
no
want to
business.
relive the Civil
Of
War.
course, there's
but-
no business in the South. You're right.
you know what I mean?
Absolutely right.
No, Columbus is the second largest city in the Midwest. And a lot of big time companies are located in Columbus, et cetera. You can say, well, Northwestern's got Chicago. Chicago barely knows it has Northwestern. So that's not, but yes, I mean, Ohio State has an advantage if, in fact, as the old saying goes, they get the boats rowing in the same direction.
Yep.
Definitely, Ohio State has an advantage in all kinds of ways. You could say Minnesota and Minneapolis, St. Paul, but not the same. It's apples and oranges, really.
Yeah.
DeVier, the other thing I want to ask you is with this House settlement, and I kind of brought it up just a second ago. You hope the lawsuits are over, although you've got players now saying, "Hey, I don't agree with this.
Right.
What
Yeah.
the judge did." They're appealing.
Yeah.
They're hoping that the settlement will end with the 2016 athletes, all those good.
Yep.
Well, you played earlier than that. I mean, is that set okay with you? You're okay not getting a little bit
Dom
of
would
back
like
pay?
to know if you want money.
Absolutely.
Are there guys like you that are going to be
Well,
saying, wait,
a little
where's
bump.
mine?
Well, we totally understand the statute of limitations and how it, can only go for 7 years. But the thing that you do have to look at with these guys and what they're doing and why they're appealing these things. Well, hey, if you get paid, or you think about the Iamaleava brothers and how they handled their transfer portal, they would be in court right now.
Yeah.
And that reality, and when Ross Bjork just kind of scanned over it, I think for young athletes, you have to really say, hey, these business decisions that I'm making and these things that I'm doing, I will be tested in court of law. My integrity will be tested. And so when you're signing these contracts with these NIL agents, I urge you to really and truly keep your word and go play ball and not let it be about the money, because now that money can be recouped in a medium that is arbitration.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. I mean, like Ross pointed out, and when they came up with the House settlement, you sign on to the House settlement, then you agree to abide by those rules.
Yep.
And that's what's going to be interesting is how many schools actually do abide by the new rules, meaning, yes, we are going to decide through a clearinghouse whether your NIL deal is up to snuff, et cetera. Because, you can still suspend players, in this modern age.
Who's in charge?
Exactly. That's
Yep.
we're still headed toward another governance machine down the road.
The College Sports Commission.
Correct.
Well, Adam,
that's
how about
part of
this,
this.
Adam? The NCAA would like Congress to get involved. Do you like that idea? And boy, I don't know. Balance the budget before you worry about college football.
Yeah, I think Congress has got a lot going on.
Yeah.
I think we can handle college football. I think.
So you don't want them involved?
No, because you know what? I figured it all out yesterday. How to work it all, and so first of all, I think Ross Bjork is exactly who Ohio State needs leading in this moment.
Absolutely.
Everything he said in that 75 minutes sounded like a guy that is just going to find the rules and he's going to be the best at all of them. He's not going to complain about them. He's going to make sure Ohio State's at the forefront. With that said, I think we got to get rid of the rules. That's what I've decided. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. You can do the salary cap thing. I like what they did with $20.5 million. Everybody gets money.
Yep.
You just can't tell people how much they're worth.
Yeah.
And is it? We can zero it in a little bit so it's not the wild, wild west. I mean, maybe we say, hey, the max deal you can do is $3 million. All right, that way you're not paying $8 million for one guy. But at the end of the day, that's what it's going to have to be because that's the world we live in. And I don't need Congress to tell me that that's where we're going to be in 10 years, which is arguably right where we are right now before the clearinghouse. It's just the only thing that makes sense.
Well, the thing I do love about this whole situation is the players gaining their independence, but more importantly, we're starting to hear rumblings about the conferences and the leagues gaining independence, and it's coming through.
I hate that.
The scheduling, and you hear Ross comment about this 12 o'clock game with Texas, and you just wonder in 10 years will we be in a place to where these mega conferences are scheduling their own games? So it's. NIL has the transfer portal has affected NIL. NIL is affecting TV, and the whole landscape of college football is changing right before our eyes, and we got to be comfortable with it.
Yeah, and conferences, Greg Sankey, Petiti, they don't want to give up their power. I mean, we can talk about what's coming in the playoffs, later on. But the bottom line is, you don't want to give up your power. And then if you're Ohio State, you don't want to give up your power. So this isn't like the National Football League by any stretch, because if they tell you to go play in London, you have to go play. Yeah, I mean, it's not at all the same, except guys are getting paid now. But it is, like Adam said, it's still the wild, wild west to a certain extent, because all of these things are going to be challenged.
Absolutely.
Tim, they don't want the athletes as employees. Why is that? And are we heading that way?
And yet you're now, instead of signing a national letter of intent, you're signing a financial paper, to agree to it. Yeah, you've got. People can argue with me all they want. I've been saying contracts is the key word here for like 3 or 4 years, because that's eventually you have to have some control other than you're such a good guy. Control over your players, over the guys who play for you, if you're treating them properly. Now they're going to be treating them properly. The next move is contracts, and I really don't understand why there's a problem. They definitely, they already are. When you're paying somebody, when you're revenue sharing for you playing football, you're an employee.
But according to the government, of course there's all that.
And because of that, then there is no protection. There's no collective bargaining agreement if they're not employees. So the institutions wouldn't like the students to
So
be
with
employed.
that said, that brings me to the next thing for you. If they're not employees, but they're getting paid. And the coaches, the big thing they hate is my guy's going to leave and go to the transfer portal. There's no security, but they're not employees. Do you think the players should have the right still, if the university, should they still be, if they don't like it, hey, I'm leaving?
Because in that position, you're a 1099 contractor, and you do have the ability to say, hey, I want to show up and leave when I want to. If you're not a W-2 employee. So this gets really hairy in terms of.
You just hurt my head there.
everything, yes.
So last thing, Adam, is this sustainable?
No.
Well, here's my thing.
This is a bump in the road.
So there are people out there that complain that this is the end of college football.
Yeah.
They've been saying that for the last 150 years. I've had enough of that. This is not the end of college football. Every Saturday, it is going to carry the exact same weight. The regular season will be just fine. Everything will be exactly as it's always been, because you can't affect the love of the game. That just doesn't happen. I don't care if money's involved. Money's been involved for the past 10 years, and guess what? We're still okay. I will say this. The biggest thing that worries me is Ohio State is now directly out of their pocket trying to fund 36 varsity sports while also giving $20.5 million every year. If I'm Ohio State and I look at someone like Rutgers, I look at someone like Maryland, I look at Northwestern, And I say, what in the world are we doing sharing our revenue from a national championship win
TV market.
with you guys? What are we doing?
You
I
still
don't
got-
want you taking my money.
New
still
York
gotta-
market.
You still have to have somebody.
And I'm already out of money
Yeah.
because of this new
And-
salary.
You still have to
cap.
have
So the
somebody
next-
to play. You still have to have somebody to beat.
All I'm saying is that's what worries me is then they say, well, we don't want to pay, share their money, and next thing we know, we're in super conferences. And then I'll be looking at the camera saying it's all ruined.
All right, guys, New York market. Remember that. Great stuff. Keep it on 10 TV, 10 TV Plus, 97.1 The Fan for all your Buckeye coverage needs.